I'm Harry Bingham from Jericho Writers, and you're here because you want to know how much money writers really make. Well, I'll tell you all about it. Listen in and we'll get started straight away. So the first thing to say is there are different levels of author and there are different types of author. So what we really need to look at is we need to look at trad authors and indie authors at different steps on the ladder. And in the question of how much money do writers make, let's split it out to indie authors. They're published but they haven't yet really got going, entry level, good middling outcome, and superstars. And same sort of thing with trad published, not published, entry level, good middling outcome, and superstars. We need to talk as well about factors other than money. Yes, we're mostly interested in this video in terms of the money stuff, but we should just touch on the other things too. Okay, and we'll start off by talking about the indie authors who are on the very lowest rung of the ladder. And they look perhaps like this indigent beggar person here. They're published, but they haven't really got going. Remember that there are 7 million ebooks on the Kindle store, and that number is increasing all the time. So by the time you listen to this video, that number will be startlingly higher. At least a third of those books have sold nothing at all, 0 copies, not even to the author. Another maybe third have sold 0 copies for months and months, and many more have sold a few and then fizzled completely. And what that means is that these authors, yeah, they're technically published, but they haven't really got started. They haven't yet actually started their careers in any meaningful way. So in a way, we can sort of move on from those guys and dismiss them. Of course, if you want to be an indie author, you need to get the marketing straight. The problem with these guys may be to do with the quality of their book. More likely to do that they haven't even done the basics of marketing, to be quite honest. So trad authors, you think, well, trad authors can't be in that position, except that what you have to remember about entry-level trad authors, or not even entry-level trad authors, is that they haven't yet got published. So remember that literary agents accept about 1 in 1,000 submissions that they receive, and the agents, when they take stuff on, they maybe only sell about 2 manuscripts in every 3 that they take on. And that means that there's a huge tail of trad-focused authors who make no money and don't get published. Okay, and what that means is, both with the indie side and the trad side, there's a huge tail of authors who just aren't making money. And that's not really surprising. These people, whether they are technically published or not, the real position is that these are not yet professional authors. They haven't yet established work of a quality that will give them any sales. On the indie side, you have to take marketing into account as well, but really these people are people who are still learning the game and haven't yet made the step into being a proper professional. So now let's turn into the sort of the authors who have got the first foot on the ladder, the first meaningful foot on that ladder of income and sales. We'll look first of all at the indie guys. Okay, so the indie authors at this entry level, like these washerwomen here, they're selling, but not a lot. Maybe they're making $30 a month, maybe $50 or $100, even $200 a month. And the fact is that for these entry level indie authors, that is a good outcome. And it's a good outcome, not because you're making lots of money. I mean, maybe you can sort of meet a grocery bill now and again, but because you are building a readership, you're making sales, you're collecting names for your email list, and you've already got, tiny as it is, the seed of something that can grow into a real business. You write more books, you improve your marketing, you improve the quality of your work, you improve your book covers, and all of this you can turn $100 into $200 a month, $200 into $400 a month, and before long you can actually see the seeds of something that is making a really meaningful contribution to your family finances. With trad authors, it's the same, but a little bit different. Okay, so let's take a look at the entry-level trad author. These guys, they've got a book deal, like these happy washerwomen here. Maybe they've got a small deal with a big 5 publisher, maybe a small or even tiny deal with a micro publisher. And in terms of income, we're talking about an advance of maybe nothing at all, maybe $1,000 at the bottom level, maybe $5,000, perhaps even $7,000 or a little bit more. What we're saying here is that these numbers are small, and again not making a real contribution to your family finances. I mean, no one's going to object to $5,000 coming through the post, but the issues here are a little bit different. Whereas I said with the indie authors, if you've got the seeds of something, then you can grow it. With trad, it's a little bit different. Supposing your first book deal is with a micro publisher that doesn't expect to sell very many copies, and indeed doesn't, You then have a sales record. And in terms of other publishers taking you on, or retailers considering whether to stock your books, you've got that sort of black mark on your system. It's like, this author only sells this many copies, which means that then if a bigger publisher is pitching your books to Walmart, they've got to kind of talk their way around that black mark. I'm not saying that's impossible at all, but what I'm saying is whereas it's clearly good to get a sort of small start in indiedom, it's not quite clear whether the same small start is advantageous or not in the trad world. But now let's move on to the next stage of the ladder. Okay, we've looked at the entry level stuff. Now let's look at that good middling outcome. We'll look at the indies again first. So these indies, you can see they're contented domestic bliss here. They've got a good middling outcome, and these guys are making an income. Perhaps we're talking in the range of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, perhaps even $50,000. And these guys now have cash to invest. They can contemplate going full time. And essentially what's happened here is these guys probably aren't yet in a position where they can say, this is a business that I can live on, but you can see the seeds of something. You've got all of the tools here, and you can write more books, you can improve the aspects of your marketing that you know you can invest. You've got a business which, even if it isn't yet supporting the whole family, you can say, I can see what I need to do to take this business from where it is to where I want it to be. And that's just a question of doing the right things and working harder, writing more books. The more products you have to sell, the more money you'll make. Okay, so again, there's this nice sort of upwards curve for indies where it's really just a question of doing more of the same and doing it better and repeating it and growing that business. For trad authors, again, a little bit different, but let's have a look at the good middling outcome for trad authors. And these guys, they've probably got a really good Big Five deal, or perhaps a major second tier type deal. There's a real attempt at marketing here, and the potential is to do very well indeed. What kind of advances are we talking about? Maybe $5,000, maybe even $50,000 per book, with royalties maybe on top of that. I say maybe on top of that because you won't get royalties unless your advance earns out. So if you've got a big advance, you've got to sell a lot of books before the royalties start coming in. And some agents will say, if I see a royalty check, that means I didn't ask for a big enough advance in the first place. And what I would say here is you're only going to get those kind of good outcomes, the potential to do very well, if you're with the right sort of publisher. Essentially, if to sell a lot of copies in trad world, you have to get placement in the supermarkets or something else that gives you a real platform for sales. And in order to get that kind of supermarket sales, I mean, supposing that a Walmart, or in the UK, a Tesco's or whatever comes along and places an order for 20,000 books, 50,000 books, some very large volume of books, a micro publisher simply can't afford to commission that print run, because if those books don't sell, they're going to come straight back to the publisher, and the supermarket will not be writing a check or will be asking for a refund. And those sort of failures could bankrupt a tiny publisher, which means you need to be with a publisher big enough that it can play those big games with the supermarkets without losing its nerve. And if there are sort of book promotions that require payment of a fee to enter them, then you need your publisher to be able to write those checks. Okay, so these good middling outcomes are absolutely possible. They happen all the time in trad world, but they come with risks. And one of the things that you're going to need is a little bit of luck. And before we get to the superstar level, we're going to come to the trad and indie superstars in a moment. First of all, let's have a scary fact intermission. Okay, scary facts intermission. Indie authors, if you want to succeed, you're going to have to write lots. We're not talking about 1 or 2 books, or even 3 or 4 or 5 books. You're going to be talking 10, 15, 20 or more books. So you've got to write a lot. The stuff you write has got to be great. It's really got to grip and entertain the reader. And you need to be in the top 1% at least for marketing. Top 1% of indie authors, I mean. And the fact is that really successful indie superstars, they're prolific. They have a really good marketing engine around them, and they are both great authors and prolific great authors and great business people. And that's a big ask. I'm not saying it's impossible. In fact, I'm saying it's very doable, but don't think that it's easy. Don't think it's just a question of writing a book or 2 and chucking it out on Amazon. That will definitely not work as a strategy. So that's the sort of scary facts for the indie side. That's scary facts for the trad side as well. The fact is, if trad authors want to succeed, they need to write a great book get the support of a big or biggish publisher. So you were talking about Big Five or a major second tier player like Kensington in the US or Bloomsbury, for example, in the UK. And you need to be in the top 5 or 10% for luck. The fact is that when publishers are pitching books to supermarkets, the supermarkets aren't reading the books. So they're working off a cover and a little bit of sales blurb from the publisher. You're not even going to be in the room in those crucial meetings. So the fact is, all the important stuff in a way is happening out of sight from you, and it's not actually really defined by your book, because those people haven't read your book, the retail buyers haven't read your book. So that is out of your hand. You do need that bit of luck to get into the big promotion so that you've got that platform for sales success. And then if you've written a great book, you can really sort of jump into the stratosphere, but you do need that launch pad, and the access to that launch pad is basically outside your control. Okay, so that's the scary facts intermission out of the way. Now let's take a look at those indies superstars. These guys are, huge outcomes are possible. $100,000, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million or more per annum. And at this point, the indie guys are going to be outsourcing as much as possible. They're going to be employing talent, freelance, they're not necessarily on the payroll, but marketing, design, social media, virtual assistants, and so on and so on. Effectively, these indie guys, yes, they're still authors, they're writing books, they're generating all of this great material and getting it out to their readers, and constantly thinking, well, this series is reaching its natural end, so I need to write a new series, and constantly coming up with new ideas and new ways of bringing great material to their public. But they're also great publishers, and you've got to be both things together: a committed, prolific, successful author and a great business person, as a teeny tiny publisher in effect. On the trad side, we've got superstars too. Okay, huge outcomes are possible here. $100,000 up to $1 million or more, and to get to this point, you need to be hitting at least one major bestseller list. So that would be like the Sunday Times in the UK, or the New York Times, or USA Today in the US, preferably all of those lists. And you need to be doing that with every single book. And you're also going to be selling your books in multiple territories overseas, and that'll happen quite naturally. You'll have an agent. As soon as you start really being successful in your own home territory, it's very easy for your agent to go and start selling rights worldwide, and you'll start getting $1,000 from Finland, you'll start getting $750 from Romania, and all of these kind of small territories, they might not chip in huge amounts of money, but add them all together and much bigger deals in Germany and France and Japan and places like that. Add all of that together and you're really making significant amounts of money. So that's the overview of the sort of ladder of spectrums for indies and trad. But I know what you want to ask. You want to ask, who makes the most money, indie or trad? And let's dive straight into that too. Now, the first thing I want to say is that before we look at this question, we need to ignore a huge chunk of authors, okay? So any author who was sort of established their name before 2013, let's say, the sort of big legacy type authors like Stephen King, Nora Roberts, John Grisham, people like that, of course they're selling tons of books today, but they are based that on their success in a world where indie publishing didn't exist. So the question that matters to you is, like, for authors who are debuting today in today's world, how much money are those guys making? Okay. So what we're going to look at is authors who have debuted in the last few years, 2013 or later. In other words, authors who have come out into a world where the indie revolution and the ebook revolution was already, I wouldn't say mature, but maturing. In other words, the world that applies to you. We're going to look at that generation of authors, and we're going to look at sales on Amazon.com only. I'll talk about sales off Amazon in a moment, but for now, we're going to look at recently published authors who've made their debut recently, and we're going to look at sales on Amazon.com. Okay, that's the slide we turn to now. Here's what the stats tell us. Big Five authors, there were about 250 authors earning $25,000 or more via Amazon.com, 170 authors earning $50,000 or more via Amazon.com, 80 authors earning in excess of $100,000 from Amazon.com. Now these numbers are approximate, they're not exact. If you want more data on them, take a look at authorearnings.com. That site unfortunately has gone a little bit quiet recently, but it's still, the numbers that it has, the data it has, are the best ever collected. Indie authors, so this is we're measuring the same thing, but look at these numbers. 900, almost 1,000 authors are earning $25,000 or more from Amazon. 570 earning $50,000 or more. 275 earning $100,000 or more. In other words, at any income level, the indies are earning, there are many more indies earning at a given level than there are trad authors. 4 to 1, 3 to 1, the numbers, although the numbers we've just looked at are approximate, the gap is so huge, you can say emphatically, for definite, there are more indies making money than there are trad authors on Amazon.com. But I said that we would look at non-Amazon sources of income, and so we will. The question is, don't trad authors get loads of income from elsewhere? They're selling through Barnes & Noble, for example, Waterston's in the UK. They're selling in the supermarkets, and they have ebook sales at Apple and Kobo and all of those places. They'll be getting audio deals, overseas deals, film and TV deals, and so on. And now, it is true that indie authors basically get zero income in terms of print sales from the supermarkets and Barnes & Noble. That's just not an arena they play in. But yes, if they want money from Apple and Kobo, they can play in those markets. And audio and overseas film deals and overseas print deals and film and TV deals. Actually, all of that is possible for indies. I recently signed a significant TV deal myself. Basically, as an indie author, I've got a big trad record as well, but this deal came to me via the US, where I'm a self-published writer, and it didn't bother the production company at all that I was self-published. They hardly noticed or cared. It just wasn't a factor for them. So yes, it is definitely true that these trad authors are making more money from those outside sources. I wouldn't say that indies are making zero, but certainly there's more other sources of income for those trad guys. But take another look at the stats we just looked at. We said there were, in terms of big 5 authors, there were 250 authors earning $25,000. There are 570 authors earning $50,000 on Amazon. Let's just take a look at exactly what that means. So what we're saying here is that if trad authors earn as much off Amazon as they do on Amazon, and if we say falsely that indies earn nothing at all anywhere except Amazon, then even so, there are more indies making a living than big 5. So we said there were 250 authors, big 5 authors making $25,000 on Amazon. We're going to double that up for all those non-Amazon sources, so they're earning $50,000 in total, 250 authors earning $50,000. Indies, there are 570 authors earning $50,000 on Amazon. We're not going to give them any pennies from elsewhere, implausibly. And these guys are earning $50,000 as well. In other words, long story short, there are more indies earning a living than trad authors at any income bracket you want to look at. Okay, so that's the short answer to the question, who makes more money? But that's not the end of the story, of course. The results shouldn't be unexpected. The fact is, indies have some advantages that are hard for trad authors to replicate. So indies get 70% of ebook sales proceeds direct from Amazon, not 14.875%. I'll come to that number in a minute. They can optimize marketing for Amazon rather than supermarkets, and they have a personal connection with the reader, not corporate. Let's just take a look at what I've just said in a bit more detail. So when you sell $100 worth of ebooks on Amazon, Amazon says 30% is for me, for providing the platform, 70% is for the publisher. Now, for an indie author, you're the author and the publisher, so you get all of that 70%, that's $70 in your pocket because you just sold $100 worth of ebooks. Very nice too. Thank you very much, Amazon. For the trad guys, Amazon passes that $70 to the publisher. The publisher keeps 3/4 of it and passes $17.50, not to you, but to your agent. The agent takes their 15% and passes the remainder, which is just that little bit less than $15 back to the author. So indie authors are making so much more money per book, or per dollar of ebook sold, that it's not surprising that they find it easier to make money on Amazon than the trad guys do. But essentially, the trad authors have to pay that whole huge publishing infrastructure before they can start to make money. So that's one issue. Then I mentioned the fact that publishers are torn. They're both wanting to market to the supermarkets and to Amazon, but it's the supermarkets who always win. And you can see there are lots of issues here actually, but one of them is really simple, which is if the publisher is trying to sell print through the supermarkets and through Barnes & Noble and that sort of thing, Barnes & Noble and the supermarkets are going to be quite annoyed if the ebook is selling for $1 or $3 or something like that. They're going to be like, hey, I want you to promote my product, and that means not slashing the price via ebook. Which means that traditional publishers find it very difficult to do that kind of price promotion, whereas that kind of price promotion is absolutely central to indie. So typically, I mean, for example, myself, the first book in my series is available for 99 cents. I make it incredibly easy for people to get access to that book. So I do ask for a tiny bit of money, but it's really just a token amount of money. And what I want is to be able to get into the series essentially for free, or almost for free. Then they love it, and then they'll buy everything else in the series at full price. And that's where I make my money. And the publishers, trad publishers, can't really play that game because of this conflict between selling, via the bricks and mortar retailers and selling via Amazon. So that's another big advantage that indies have. They are really clear about their marketing channel, and they can put all of their bets on that one thing. And then as well, in terms of like marketing direct to the reader, which is what, in a way, online marketing is all about. The indies, when they write an email from their laptop, that goes straight into their reader's laptop, and that is an email from the author to the reader, and the reader is excited about it because they know that if they hit reply, that goes straight back to the author. By contrast, if you get a corporate email from a Penguin Random House or an Hachette or some outfit like that, it's just not as exciting because that is a corporate email and you don't have that personal connection. So indies have some real advantages, and it's those things that I think that lie behind the sort of recent financial success of indie authors. But I said that we were going to talk about money, but it's not the whole story. If you think you want to go indie, here are some things to ask yourself. Are your books in the right genre? If you're writing sort of literary fiction, there just isn't really yet a model for successful marketing of high literary fiction as an indie author. Are you writing a series? Series just sell much better than standalones. Are you prolific? Can you continue to generate plenty of material? Can you handle the marketing? Can you handle the business side of things? And do you want to? Okay, and what you want to do is really important, but maybe what you want is the sort of grandeur and the acclaim of being traditionally published. The money is less important, and you certainly don't want to handle the kind of business and marketing side of things. And if those things are true about you, there's no shame in that. That's just the sort of person you are, and you should certainly go the trad route because you'll never really make a fist of the indie route, because you do have to have that appetite for the business side of things. And if you're thinking of going trad, then there are some other questions that you need to ask yourself. Is your book good enough? There's no point in attempting the trad route until your book is really of a right quality. Is it marketable? In the ways that big five houses and so on think about marketability. Do you want the restrictions of third-party publishing? Do the financial risks and rewards make sense to you? Just say a little word about the restrictions of third-party publishing. If you are somebody who likes to kind of have control of things, you've got to remember that when you sell a book to a big five publisher, you are selling the book. It's their book now. So yes, if they're nice, and they will be nice, they'll talk to you about the cover and that kind of thing and marketing, but essentially those decisions are theirs. You can have input, but they're not your decisions, they're theirs. So that is essentially a roundup of the question, where is the money made and who's making it, what are some of the other factors there. If you are heading for the trad route, after listening to this, we've got some great materials on preparing your agent submission pack, free from the link below. If you're thinking of going the indie route, we've got some really great materials for you too. And again, they're available from the link below. All of the slides from this video are also available from those links, so go get them. It's been a pleasure you watching. I'm Harry Bingham for Jericho Writers. Very many thanks.